Hello, folks, and welcome back to our Stockholm VGC Championship 2025 Regionals overview. We're looking at round number 8 here now. Round number 8 takes place at the end of day number 1. Players are going to be tired. They've played 7 rounds before this, and this on-stream match is always going to be a win and in. If you win, you get to day 2. If you lose, you are out. So a lot of times we might see some safer play, some pretty standard reads. But coming into these games, I'm always excited to see if players go for more exciting moves, more daring moves, trying to guarantee, trying to push their way in, or if maybe we see some more mistakes since it's at the end of the day. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in to round number 8. We have Roberto Parente and Oliver Eskolin here, both relatively successful players in their own rights. Oliver making it to Worlds top 16 last year, as well as UIC top, or LAIC top 8? An IC top 8. And Roberto with a lot of in-region results, pretty successful on both ends for both players here. So these players do both certainly have a lot of experience with these longer days, with these longer tournaments, and so are going to be pretty prepared to take on this. Now, one thing to note, we've seen a lot of slower matches recently, or at least slower teams. If either player has, that means their matches are going longer. It makes them a lot more worn out, but I'm excited to see what we have here. Now, I will say, the graphics team has been bugging with me, but we have a very, very sun-based team here, as sun-based as you can be, with Koraidon, Orical, Compulse, Terrifier, Clear Amulet, Flare Blitz, Collision Course, Flame Charge, and Protect. Venusaur is paired up here, not something we see every day. Chlorophyll with Terraghost, Focus Sash, Grass Knot, Sludge Bomb, and that all-powerful Sleep Powder, along with Protect. Chiyu takes great advantage of the sun with that Choice Scarf, Terrifier, Heat Wave, Dark Pulse, Overheat, and Snarl. Beads of Ruin coming in clutch. Iron Crown as well, paired with that Indeed down in the bottom left corner. It's Terra Water with Expanding Force, Tachyon Cutter, Calm Mind, and Protecting the Boost Energy to buff its stats. Indeed here with Psychic Surge to pair with the Iron Crown. Psychic helping and Trick Room, Follow Me, and that Psychic Seed. And then Raging Bolt to round things out with Photosynthesis, takes great advantage of the sun as well. Life Orb is going to be doing a lot of damage with that Terra Electric, Thunderbolt, Trigger Meteor, Thunderclap, and Protect. No Volt Switch here is the move missing. This is a dedicated sun team if I have ever seen one, but at the same time, you also have the dual damage output of the Iron Crown and that Psychic Terrain mode that you can really take advantage of here if you are Roberto. So wouldn't be surprised if we see some mode that involves Chiyu, Iron Crown, and Didi, and maybe the Koraidon, or just a full-on dedicated sun team. Obviously, that is going to come down to whatever Oliver is bringing to the table. You definitely have to be prepared for that sun mode, but countering this Psychic Terrain could be pretty big, with Fake Out being a pretty prominent move between Iron Hands, Rillaboom, Incineroar, and a couple other Pokemon, the very occasional Hitmontop with Wide Guard that might come in from time to time to deal with restricted Pokemon. I doubt we're going to see it in this one, but those priority moves being blocked by Psychic Terrain really put a damper on things, and we do have a counter to it. This is a super standard Kyogre team with that Drizzle, Terra, Grass Kyogre, much bulkier with the Origin Pulse, Ice Beam, Calm Mind, Protect, and Leftovers. Rillaboom to also heal that Kyogre even more, Grassy Surge to set the Grassy Terrain and counter the Psychic Terrain, Assault Vest, Terra Fire with Drum Beating, Grassy Glide, Fake Out, and U-Turn. A lot of times it's Wood Hammer instead of that Drum Beating. Exciting to see that there. Incineroar is also here with the knockoff Parting Shot, Fake Out, and Will-O-Wisp. Again, no Flare Blitz here since you're bringing a rain team. Makes a lot of sense. And it is that Safety Goggles Terra Ghost. Urshifu here, also Terra Ghost. Make sure it can't get hit by Fake Out if it needs to. Choice Scarf, Surging Sharks, Close Combat, U-Turn, and Aqua Jet should be outspeeding Chiyu potentially. Actually, Chiyu's pretty fast. I'm not exactly certain. Amoonguss here with the Terra Steel is not something you see every day, along with the Rocky Helmet, Spore, Rage Fighter, Sludge Bomb, and Protect. A lot of times it's that Terra Water instead. Terra Steel still makes it vulnerable to fire type damage. That's very intriguing to see. And then Roaring Moon to round things out here with knockoff Acrobatics, Tailwind, and Protect, along with that what's it called? Booster Energy. Duh, I was blanking on it for a second. Roaring Moon is definitely the Tailwind setter here for Oliver. And Oliver's going to want to be going fast here in the face of Roberto. You definitely have to be worried, though, for Oliver if Trick Room gets set, or not Trick Room, but if this Indeedee gets set up and Psychic Terrain is active, if your Rillaboom goes down, even if you don't have the sun up, Expanding Force can really be a pain in the butt. So Incineroar and Amoonguss is the lead for Oliver, and we see the Iron Crown and Raging Bolt here. Both those Paradox Pokemon coming in those, you know, not the loyal trio, whatever, the trios that got their Paradox variants, Raging Bolt and Iron Crown here. Iron Crown with that booster energy to still get some additional damage off. Iron Crown really hates to see an Incineroar come in, but it doesn't mind being up against Amoonguss. Now, if you are Roberto, it's not ridiculous to think that maybe you want to bring in the Indeedee here to set the Psychic Terrain, stop Incineroar from going for a potential Fake Out. If you're Oliver, though, knock off into that I almost said Cobalion. I'm going to say it a couple times. Just be warned. Into that Iron Crown is incredibly tempting. It won't do a ton of damage since the booster energy is knocked off, but it could still do a decent amount of work. Raging Bolt, though, not in too bad of a spot. It doesn't want to have to take a Spore, which it probably would from this Amoonguss. I'm interested to see if a Draco Meteor would take out the Amoonguss potentially, but I think if you're Oliver, you're going to play a little bit more defensively. Exactly. Amoonguss goes for the Protect here. I don't know if we're going to see the Fake Out. That'd be a very bold move, and we don't see it. Calm Mind is actually what is coming through for this Iron Crown. So, boosting up that special attack, making it a little bit bulkier against potential Kyogre in the back here. Thunderbolt comes through for the Raging Bolt. Interested to see how much this damage this does to the Incineroar. A good bit, but doesn't KO it. So now Incineroar gets to go for a move. It is going to be that parting shot going into the Iron Crown. So the special attack set back to neutral, but the special defense boost still there, and that could definitely come into play later in the game. So, Incineroar swapping out Roberto, also making the play that if Incineroar hard swaps into Kyogre, that could still do some decent damage potentially, but now Oliver has a choice to make. Both of Roberto's Pokemon are still in a really, really good spot. They can do a ton of damage. You don't want to bring in your Kyogre, and you could bring in your Rillaboom, but that gives Roberto free access to bring in the Indeedee, set up that Psychic terrain, and we actually see the Roaring Moon come out here for Oliver. I'd be surprised if we don't see the Kyogre in the back, but we very well might not. Both Rillaboom and Kyogre kind of, counter whatever Roberto is bringing, but sometimes you might make the call that you don't need to do one or the other. Roaring Moon can get a Tailwind up if it needs to. It does have to worry about a potential Thunderbolt if it goes for that Terra Flying Acrobatics, which does quite a lot, but it's in a really good spot against this Iron Crown. Tachyon Cutter can do some decent damage, but Expanding Force will do Zip 0 and nada to it. It would take down the Amoonguss potentially. That is something that Roberto needs to keep in mind. Amoonguss can be a very, very powerful Pokemon in the later stages of the game. We have seen a non-zero amount of Amoonguy win 1vx situations. So, for Roberto, again, you are still worried about this Cobalion. It is under threat from this Roaring Moon, and we do see the Terrassalization coming out for that Iron Crown, going into that Terra Water, giving it a much better matchup defensively into the Roaring Moon, as well as the Incineroar if it comes back in. The Amoonguss kind of stays where it's at. We do see the Terrassalization on the other side, though, for Oliver. I'm interested to see, is this going to be the Amoonguss or the Roaring Moon? It is going to be that Amoonguss going into the Terra Steel. That means it'll potentially resist a Draco Meteor or as well Psychic damage going into that. It's a very interesting Terrassalization, making it much more defensive against things like Psychic from Calyrex Shadow Rider, but we see another Calm Mind from this Cobalion, even though we have only seen physical damage coming out of Oliver so far. Those two special defense boosts still feel really good, all things considered, and Draco Meteor from Roberto into the Roaring Moon does so much with that critical hit. I don't know if that was even necessary combined with the Life Orb there, but Roaring Moon goes down. It got that knockoff off from the Life Orb. So actually, no, that wasn't with Life Orb damage. The critical hit maybe mattered there. I don't know. Draco Meteor is such a strong move, and Raging Bolt is incredibly powerful. But Amoonguss does get the Spore off here into that Iron Crown. It does have a 2x special defense boost, so it's going to be feeling pretty darn good, even up against a potential Origin Pulse here. And now if you are Roberto, you're -2 on the special attack. You don't have your Life Orb here. A Thunderbolt or Thunderclap, I'm not sure, would take out the Kyogre from this range, and Amoonguss feels pretty good about going for a Rage Powder here, I think. Kyogre could also just go for Protect, and Amoonguss could fire off another Spore into the Raging Bolt spot, which would feel really, really bad if you are Roberto, and that could give Oliver a pretty clean round into these next couple of turns. So, Calm Mind from the Kyogre. Again, it's feeling decent here. We don't see a Rage Powder from the Amoonguss, but Kyogre moving first. That does guarantee no Thunderclap, notably, which is pretty big. I'm interested to see what does this Raging Bolt go for. It is going to be that Thunderbolt with that special defense boost and the -2 on the special attack. Yeah, that just doesn't do anything into the Kyogre. And a Sludge Bomb actually comes out from the Amoonguss, taking this Raging Bolt down to 23 HP. If Kyogre goes for an attack here, that will take the Raging Bolt down, no problem. But at the same time, Raging Bolt can just go down really, really easily. It's not doing enough damage to this Kyogre to ultimately matter. Now, Iron Crown has that one guaranteed turn of sleep. It now gets to try to fire off some attacks. Again, with that steel, or with that water typing rather, it is terrestrialized away from the steel type. It feels pretty good up against this Kyogre, which is now at a +2 special defense and special attack. So maybe not feeling as good potentially as it was before, but I think the big thing, we do see the Iron Crown wake up here. The Expanding Force is going to come through onto the Kyogre, does just neutral damage essentially, and takes Kyogre down to half HP. The Thunderbolt chips it down just a little bit more, and the Paralysis, that could be very, very big. Sludge Bomb comes through from the Amoonguss into that Iron Crown, and the Poison as well. I don't know if that's going to matter here. Roberto might be able to get out enough damage to end this game before Oliver gets to take advantage of that. Notably, Roberto has not revealed any of his other Pokemon. This Kyogre is incredibly low, and the Roaring Moon is already down. So Kyogre can go for Protect here. If it gets paralyzed off of this Protect, that's a really, really tough spot. Roberto also has the option to go for Calm, or go for Expanding Force, switch the Indeedee in. That'll do a decent amount to the Amoonguss. It wouldn't take it out, but that should do enough damage to KO the Kyogre from this range here, which would also give Oliver a ton of trouble going into the later stages of this game. Oliver doesn't really want to switch out the Kyogre at this point, especially with 2 Calm Mind boosts. Otherwise, this Iron Crown is just not going to be, or is just not going to be able to be dealt with, even with that Incineroar coming in. And we do see Roberto switching out that Raging Bolt and bringing in the Indeedee. So Expanding Force activated, or I'm sorry, Psychic Terrain activated, Expanding Force now boosted up. Indeedee gets that, I believe it's going to be a special defense boost here from the Psychic Seed. Indeed it is. So it's going to be taking potential Origin Pulse pretty well here. And we see the Protect coming out of the Kyogre, so guaranteeing that's going to stay alive on this turn. But Expanding Force does come through. This is going to hit the Amoonguss here. It shouldn't do all that much damage, especially with that Steel type. It does take Amoonguss down to just over half HP, and Spore comes through again, but it's into the Indeedee this time, and Indeedee already essentially has its job done. Psychic Terrain on the field here. Kyogre's going to heal up just a little bit. Expanding Force now hitting 2 targets. It's not going to be quite as powerful as it was before when it hit Kyogre single targeted, but it still might be enough to take Kyogre down. And if you're Roberto, again, expanding, you already have the Psychic Terrain activated. You don't have to worry about it dropping. Indeedee is going to be relatively bulky here with that special defense boost. You can opt to keep it out, or if you want to try to neuter this Kyogre's damage output even further, we've gotten a sneak peek at the Koraidon in the back for Roberto. Koraidon coming in would overwrite the rain and put Oliver into an even worse spot, and so that Kyogre would just not be doing very much damage at all. We do see Indeedee switching out here. Could potentially be Raging Bolt coming back in, but I'd be surprised to see that sacrifice, and it is Koraidon making its first appearance in this set. Orichalcum Pulse activating, and here comes the sun. Expanding Force once more. Will this be enough to KO the Kyogre? That's the big question. Not quite. Kyogre and Amoonguss both staying alive here. Origin Pulse won't do too much. Amoonguss gets to go for potentially another Sludge Bomb here, but it is going to be the Spore going into that Indeedee slot, anticipating the switch, but for Roberto, I think you still don't mind it. You got the Psychic Terrain set up. You got the Sun set up. Your Iron Crown is feeling pretty good here. Kyogre's going to restore a little bit of HP. Maybe you'll go for a potential Protect here to just try to get that Iron Crown whittled down as much as possible. Some combination of Protect and Sludge Bomb, maybe from this Amoonguss, but I don't know. Amoonguss is almost certainly going to be going down to another Expanding Force here. And notably, if Incineroar comes in, it can't go for potential Fake Out, and it won't be faster than this Iron Crown. Tachyon Cutter could be doing a lot of work. Now, Roberto does have 2 Pokemon that are asleep, and Raging Bolt is incredibly low here. There's a world where Roberto gets to keep this Raging Bolt on the field really, really cleanly. With this Iron Crown doing a ton of damage here. We saw that Iron Crown is faster than this Kyogre, which is pretty big. Incineroar now making its way onto the field, though. It's at relatively low HP, and it's going to be forced to deal damage here, which means that Raging Bolt can just thunderclap it one way or another. It doesn't have the Life Orb, so it won't be doing quite as much damage, but Kyogre is paralyzed. Actually, I guess Kyogre is faster. I'm not exact. Okay, well, I'm going to be honest. My brain has been bamboozled here. I could have sworn Iron Crown went first one time, but that paralysis from the Kyogre really, really hurts. The Raging Bolt staying on the field is going to be pretty big in the long run here. Amoonguss coming back out onto the battlefield. It's still not going to have a good time. Even if Roberto's Raging Bolt went down. Raging Bolt, Roaring Moon, Iron Crown. There's too many R's here. I'm getting confused. But Amoonguss not in a great spot, even though it got to heal up with that Regenerator ability. Incineroar is immune to Expanding Force, but it is certainly not immune to that Tachyon Cutter. And with the Koraidon and Indeedee both in the back, if Roberto can stall for a couple more turns to wait to bring that Indeedee in, then Psychic Terrain can once again get set back up. Not that it necessarily matters here, but Koraidon should be able to close this out as long as this Amoonguss can go down. So Oliver takes note of that. This Amoonguss is going down one way or another on that turn, and Roberto Parente winning game number 1 with some pretty smart gameplay. And quite frankly, I feel like that comes down to Roberto was pretty cautious about bringing Ndidi in over the course of that game. But once Roaring Moon went down and Kyogre came in, Roberto has seen everything, and Ndidi can come in and you can start clicking Expanding Force with impunity, quite frankly. And so that is a little bit of a risk that you take as if you're Oliver. If you don't bring in that grassy terrain, it's not necessarily that it does a ton for you. Obviously, it's really, really nice for that Kyogre to get nice and bulky, heal up a lot with the combination of leftovers and grassy terrain, but you're also healing your opponent at that rate. But the main thing that that grassy terrain is good for is getting rid of psychic terrain. It allows your Incineroar to click Fake Out. It stops Expanding Force from being nearly as powerful, and that is a huge thing that Oliver is missing when that Rillaboom doesn't come in. As soon as Roberto sees that, the Ndidi hits the field and the game just very swiftly turns in Roberto's favor here. So if I am Oliver here, I'm probably looking to try to fit Rillaboom into the strategy somehow. I'm honestly not sure if stopping the sun is as important, but Kyogre is just such a pivotal part of this team. It does a vast majority of the damage. So I think if you're Oliver, you have to bring some combination of Rillaboom and Kyogre, which is really difficult when it feels like Roberto maybe doesn't have to bring both a terrain and weather setter. That being said, let's go ahead and hop into game number 2 here of round number 8. We see the Roaring Moon switch up for Oliver alongside the Amoonguss, but Roberto bringing in the same duo that took him so far early in game number 1. Booster Energy is activated for Roaring Moon here. It once again is under pressure from a Draco Meteor from this Raging Bolt. Amoonguss obviously can go for that Terra Steel as well as Follow Me. Right now, Expanding Force is not a major threat. If that Amoonguss does indeed go for the Terra Steel, it should be able to take an Expanding Force pretty well, and Roaring Moon is currently immune. Now, if Amoonguss does go for that Terastallization, that leaves Oliver into a pretty rough spot where you can't Terra for the rest of the game. Defensive Terra on something like Amoonguss isn't always the best, but in this exact scenario, Terra Steel doesn't feel all that bad. If you can get a Spore off early in this game and start getting your setup going with Tailwind, getting Roaring Moon just to get some chip damage out before bringing in the Kyogre to sweep things up, that doesn't feel too bad. But again, I'm interested to see, does Oliver have Rillaboom in the back? Which player? It's going to be pretty big here to determine which player is going to lose a Pokemon first and reveal their hand. We do see Raging Bolt going for the Terastallization here. It looks like this is going to be a Terra Electric Thunderbolt potentially. You don't necessarily want to walk into a Tailwind on the Roaring Moon maybe. Amoonguss, I imagine, is going for the Terastallization here. That's exactly what we see. It is going to be that Terra Steel here. What is the game plan going to be? I wouldn't be surprised if this Iron Crown just goes for a Calm Mind. We saw that be a big priority in the previous game. Knockoff into the Raging Bolt again, takes away the Life Orb. Expanding Force comes through for the Iron Crown off the rip, not getting buffed up at all, and Amoonguss takes that like an absolute champ. Thunderbolt coming through though. Where is this going? It'd be surprising to go into the Roaring Moon. It's going into the Amoonguss, but takes it incredibly well, just down into the red, and Spore comes out early in the game for Oliver. This Iron Crown not going to be able to set up as much as it was before, and Amoonguss still on the battlefield. It can switch out, get some health from Regenerator here, and now this Raging Bolt in a tough spot. Knockoff did a ton of damage and removed that Life Orb, so Roaring Moon going to be able to get some work in here, do some damage, get some chip around, and this Raging Bolt either has to click something like Draco Meteor potentially into the Roaring Moon, or just potentially get slept going into this next turn, or try to get rid of this Amoonguss. Thunderbolt here should get the job done, but Roaring Moon potentially going for an Acrobatics could take out the Raging Bolt. And we do see Roberto going for a bit of a cheeky changeup. We do see that the Iron Crown is going back into the party, and Venusaur is making its debut on this stage. We have not seen Venusaur. I personally have not seen Venusaur yet on stream in any of these Reg G matches. I'm very excited to see it now. Knockoff goes through into the Venusaur and does a ton of damage, removing that Focus Sash here. Spore coming through, notably going into the protected Raging Bolt. Now, this Venusaur is in a really precarious spot. It likely goes down to a Sludge Bomb from the Amoonguss. It certainly goes down to an Acrobatics from the Roaring Moon, maybe even a Knockoff. But there is a world where Koraidon switches in, and Venusaur can go for a Spore into the Roaring Moon, put it to sleep, and maybe that's a worthy sacrifice. But for Oliver, you're feeling pretty good about this situation. Your Amoonguss stayed on the battlefield. It's still exerting pressure. Redirection isn't really going to be too big of a worry versus the Venusaur, but Roaring Moon now has two, quite frankly, very good targets for an Acrobatics here. The question is, what is Oliver going to do? If we see a switch here, I think that might be, Amoonguss does switch out. Oliver a little bit worried about it potentially getting put to sleep maybe. Incineroar making its way out onto the battlefield now. Fake out available. I think if you're Oliver, this reads to you. If you see this Venusaur in, you almost always are going to be seeing Koraidon with it. The Roaring Moon does go for Protect here, so Incineroar on the battlefield. It can't get slept because it has those safety goggles. So Sleep Powder goes through, does go into that Protect. Roaring Moon stays awake on this turn, and what is Raging Bolt doing here? Thunderbolt comes through. This won't KO the Incineroar. We saw that before, but it's going to do a decent amount. Whoa, it does way more than I thought it would, quite frankly, even without that Life Orb. Incineroar down to just a third of its HP. Fake Out could do a lot of work here. Put either of these Pokemon into some dire straits, but Raging Bolt can still go for a potential Thunderclap to get some more damage out, and this Incineroar, now being incredibly low, is under pressure from both of these Pokemon. Now, Venusaur does go for that Protect, feeling pretty good here, not wanting to take too much damage, trying to stay alive, and we see the Protect out of the Raging Bolt as well. This turn, just blanking the Fake Out here if you are Roberto, and trying to get a read on Oliver. If we see a Tailwind here, that could be a really, really bold and good move from Oliver with that Fake Out pressure, but no, it is just going to be that knockoff pressure once again being applied into the Venusaur. Again, Tailwind would have been a really, really good call, but not necessarily a guaranteed success there, especially if Roberto just ignores the Fake Out and goes for an attack into the Raging Bolt like a Draco Meteor. Now, Draco Meteor now available. If you are Oliver, your Roaring Moon is still going to be the fastest thing on the field. You could go for a Tailwind if you want to. That would potentially be sacrificing your Roaring Moon, but getting some damage out, trying to take out this Venusaur, or if there's a potential switch, getting a knockoff into that slot could also be pretty nice. Knockoff plus Parting Shot there could be pretty sweet, and we do see the Iron Crown making its way back onto the field. This is the turn, though, that Oliver does go for the Tailwind. Pretty willing to say that a Draco Meteor might be coming into this spot. You see the knockoff. It's super effective, but there is nothing to knock off, so it does not do maximum damage. Draco Meteor does come through, and it does really cleanly take care of the Roaring Moon. No critical hit needed. We could have probably figured that out, but Roaring Moon down. That is the first KO of game number 2 so far. Iron Crown on the battlefield, doesn't have any booster energy boost, does not have any special defense boost, and Kyogre is now active on the battlefield with that Drizzle. No Venusaur on the field right now to get a Grass Knot out onto it, and no Koraidon currently to overwrite the Sun. But we could certainly see a switch into that. I think if you are Oliver, you're pretty pressured. In the last match, Roberto saw Oliver go for a Calm Mind in the face of this Raging Bolt. Does not want to take a potential Thunderclap here, although again, a -2 Thunderclap without the Life Orb, or Thunderbolt without the Life Orb, really did not do very much damage. So Oliver could be comfortable here going for something like an Origin Pulse, which does have a chance to miss, but in the Sun would do very little damage anyways. Koraidon does now make its way onto the field. Another switch coming through. Koraidon overwrites the Sun. What is Oliver going for here? So, Proto-Sense is activated from the Raging Bolt. Speed getting heightened here could be interesting. Might make some changes, but no, the Raging Bolt is just going back into the party. We're going to be seeing the Venusaur make its way onto the battlefield now. So, where is the damage coming from? It is just going to be that Calm Mind from the Kyogre, feeling pretty safe, but it now has to deal with a potential Collision Course, a Sleep Powder, a Grass Knot from this Venusaur or the Koraidon, and Parting Shot not getting a KO here. Notably, Amoonguss is going to come onto this battlefield. It's going to have to potentially deal with a Flare Blitz from this Koraidon, and Venusaur can just go for Grass Knot after Grass Knot into the Kyogre. Oliver might just be forced to switch out this Kyogre here into Incineroar to try to make something happen, but even so, that puts Amoonguss in a very, very dire spot. If you're Oliver, I'm reading something, or if you're Roberto, I'm reading something like a Protect from the Amoonguss and a switch from the Kyogre into the Incineroar. that might be the only option that Oliver has here, because Kyogre having to deal with a Grass Knot here would just be brutal. Venusaur does not get redirected by Rage Powder, and this Amoonguss is almost certainly going down to a Flare Blitz from this Koraidon. Sleep Powder just coming through from Roberto, not wanting to get too much damage out. Might have been a little bit tough if that was a swap into the Incineroar, but Kyogre is now asleep. This Koraidon is going to be the next thing to move here. There's no Protect coming out from this Amoonguss. Rocky Helmet damage is going to be pretty big, but it's actually just going to be the Collision Course. You might as well, if you're Roberto. I completely forgot that fighting is super effective into Steel, and that is what Amoonguss is, and Amoonguss goes down. Rocky Helmet recoil damage does a decent amount, but without the Flare Blitz recoil, Koraidon is feeling really, really good. Oliver is going to get to bring in Incineroar here, but this Kyogre is going to have one turn of sleep guaranteed. Incineroar makes its way onto the battlefield now. It's going to get to press Fake Out one time before it's going to go down to a potential Collision Course, and then Oliver has to hope that Kyogre can get some damage out. But I think now that there is no opportunity for Rain to get set back up, this Kyogre is guaranteed one turn of sleep. There's still 3 more turns of Sun. I think Roberto has this in the bag. Raging Bolt is still in the back. It's going to have its special attack reset here. That turn was massive. I think Oliver was trying to think one more additional step ahead of Roberto. If Roberto was banking on a potential switch out, if the Incineroar comes in, you're trying to get two. I think Oliver just got 2 in the weeds there. Koraidon goes for the Protect. There's no reason not to go for a double Protect here. You don't need to risk too much damage, or I guess just go for the single Protect on the Koraidon. Venusaur now getting to throw out some damage onto that Kyogre here. Grass Knot doesn't actually do quite as much as I was expecting. Does about a third of it, but Kyogre stays asleep. Koraidon, with just that Protect, not having too much to do this turn. Now, Incineroar is not winning this game on its own. If you are Roberto, and the Tailwind now petering out, that might be why the Kyogre outsped the Iron Crown previously. Actually, no, that was in the previous game. Ignore me on that point. So, Kyogre now under a decent amount of pressure again. Incineroar not feeling it good in this situation. Its best bet, honestly, might be to try to click Parting Shot into the Koraidon. But even so, like I said, if Roberto can just take out this Incineroar, Kyogre remains asleep. That is huge. It looks like it was going for Protect there. Grass Knot comes through, take the Kyogre down to just a third of its HP. Collision Course coming out now, taking down this Incineroar. And if you are Oliver, it is really frustrating. You're trying to play to your outs. Kyogre potentially waking up, maybe getting some big crits, maybe being able to survive. Raging Bolt and Iron Crown being both on the field together. Leftovers recovery may be just enough, but going into these last couple of turns, some combination of Grass Knot plus Collision Course should get the job done here, and Oliver Eskolin sees the writing on the wall. Roberto Parente moving on to day number 2 with a 6-2 record. That game, as so many games do, feels like it came down to one turn. Obviously, everything builds up to that. You have all the choices that you're making throughout the game to get there, but that final turn where Oliver does not switch out the Kyogre, I feel, again, I'm not reading all of the game theory charts. Instinctually, it feels like in switching into the Incineroar, trying to get Rain back up is the thing to do. You're potentially just outright sacrificing your Incineroar, but you have to try to keep Kyogre active. If you can get the Rain set back up, even if that's forcing the Koraidon to switch out potentially, then maybe you're in a world where you can win, right? Amoonguss goes for Protect. You have Fake Out online with the Incineroar on the next turn. Amoonguss can either go for Spore or Sludge Bomb into the Venusaur maybe. I don't know if that's the right play, but either Amoonguss stays in, tries to get some damage out, tries to get a sleep out, or you go ahead and swap into that Kyogre, maybe reading that the Koraidon slot is going to go ahead and switch out. The game feels like it gets to go longer from there, right? It's almost guaranteed to go longer, and I think Oliver needs those extra turns from that spot. But at the end of the day, Roberto played it well, kept it simple, didn't overthink things, and eventually got that 6th win. So we're going to be looking at the day 2 matches in the next few videos, so keep an eye out for that. And until next time, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.